العالمين نحمده ونستعين به ونتوكل عليه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين المطهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولما بلغ معه السعي قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى. قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, for the acceptance of the deeds, for the hastening of the reappearance of the awaited Savior, Ajjallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, enlighten your souls, purify your hearts and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Respected elders, sisters and brothers in Islam, Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi Ta'ala wa Barakatuh.
Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
They are an important segment of society that are sometimes forgotten. They are emphasized as crucial for the development of the forthcoming generation within the religion of Islam. And their status is highlighted within the Quran as well as the teachings of the Holy Ahlul Bayt. Fathers are considered important individuals in any society throughout the history of mankind. You recognize that fathers play a very pivotal, important role in ensuring that a society is brought up based on certain values and certain principles. Fathers are looked upon as exemplary. They're looked upon as leaders within the household. Many times you find human beings in different societies looking up to fathers and respecting fatherhood. But at the same time, sometimes the idea behind fatherhood doesn't get the reverence or necessarily the respect that it deserves. You find that sometimes the role of the father is very much limited to the idea of physical nourishment. In that we are told that the father normally is the breadwinner in the house, ensuring that the children, as well as, for example, the mother, the wife, gets what they necessarily need to develop, to achieve their potential. Sometimes the father is the one who emphasizes upon the need for what? For education, upon the need to gain learning and to attain certain types of qualification and to be able to excel. I remember reading that back in the time, there was a father who used to be a farmer in a particular farm, and his son was refusing to go to school. And this particular father was emphasizing that you must go to school. His son said, I would like to become a farmer like you. I don't need to gain knowledge. This type of profession I love. I love to see you waking up every morning, yes, being in the farm, doing what you do. I don't need to. He was very stubborn. The father said, no. The son said, we as a family are in need of buying a donkey. Instead of spending money for me to go to school and upon my education, my suggestion is that we use this money to get a donkey because we are requiring it in this particular farm. The father said, no, I will not do this. He said, why? He said, if I do this, I will end up with 2 donkeys. That donkey and you. In the idea that education is of their great importance. And fathers play a very important role in fulfilling of this. Mind you, today we have all kinds of stories emerging about how people are disrespecting fathers as well as parents. They're not seeing their roles. I read about a week or 2 weeks ago that there's a man in Mumbai in India. He he is now filing a lawsuit against his parents. They said, you brought me into this life without taking my permission. He said that, this is not right. You should have asked my permission before you bring, and you did so because of your enjoyment. I tell you, this particular individual is not as bad as one of the senators in Nebraska. I don't know if you heard that maybe about 20 years ago, he filed a lawsuit against God the Almighty. He said because of the bad things that are happening, but the lawsuit failed because of two reasons. The person who's being accused could not be found and there's no address for them. The realization that emerges is what? Is that there is a special emphasis that many of us have as far as the father is concerned. When you look at the religion of Islam, there is a status occupied by the fathers. Yet, the religion comes forward and says, don't think that when the term ab or father is mentioned, it is only in reference to the biological father. There are different levels that the religion discusses when it comes to fatherhood. The first is with regards to general guidance and leadership of the community. Because we have a beautiful narration from the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasul al-A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ana wa Ali abawa hadhihi al-ummah. Myself and Ali are the fathers of this ummah. What a special status that is enjoyed by these two holy individuals. That they are the fathers in terms of guidance, that they are the fathers in terms of light and direction. Yes? And I tell you, this was manifested during their time as well as, of course, their great legacy today. Because on the day of Eid, we are told there were children playing in the streets of Medina. One of the children playing or wanting to play was an orphan. And that child did not have clothes that were new. But the other children were rejecting that young orphan because the fact that they had not been presentable. So he was standing there with tears trickling down his eyes. There approaches a man next to him. Yes. He says to him, why are you not playing this Eid today? Why are you not happy? He said, look, because I don't have new clothes. I'm an orphan. I've lost my father. He said, come with me. This man takes this child, takes him home, provides him with new clothing. Yes. And this young boy emerges, goes to play with those children. They see that he's now clothed in very nice clothing. They say, we thought you're an orphan. He said, not from today. He says, why? He says, from today my father is Ali ibn Abi Talib. And may Allah bless our fathers as well as our mothers for ensuring that we have this deep connection and this love and this association with these holy individuals. Because do not underestimate the impact of this belief in the wilaya and in the love of these holy individuals that is passed on to the children from the father as well as the mother. Because this is pivotal, and we have wonderful examples of our youngsters who have been inspired by their parents, including their fathers, when it comes to what? When it comes to engaging in debates or highlighting the significance of the love of such individuals like the Holy Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen. Because I read a wonderful story that happened in one of the Gulf countries that is unfortunately going through sectarianism, that people who follow the school of Ahl al-Bayt are not necessarily respected or frowned upon or persecuted. There was this young man by the age of 12 from the school of Ahl al-Bayt. He had learned this understanding of the importance of the love of Ali and the Ahl al-Bayt from his parents and including from his father. One day he was in school. It is a common practice in those countries that sometimes the teacher does what? He leaves a student to look after the affairs of the class for a few moments whilst the teacher leaves to get some jobs done, a few moments, and then he returns. That person would be responsible to ensure that there is what? There is no chaos in the class, that the students are all quiet or doing their work. So this young boy is selected by the teacher. Now you're responsible for the next few moments. I'm going to pop out. You're going to make sure that the class is all settled. He returns after a few moments. The teacher returns, finds the class All quiet, he thanks the student. But before that young boy returns back to his seat, he looks at his teacher. He says, "Sir, I have a question. That question is really annoying me." He says, "What's your question?" He said, "You are the teacher of this classroom. You wanted to ensure that there is stability, that there is what? There is some kind of calm. There is no chaos amongst the students. And therefore you ensured that when you left for a few minutes, there is somebody who keeps this calm. My question is, how can Rasulullah leave the ummah of the religion and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's instructions without appointing a successor? You don't want to leave the classroom without having someone to ensure everything is going well. And you expect Rasulullah to... The teacher looked at him and said, "How dare you? You're teaching me? I'm supposed to be doing that." You are suspended from school or expelled. Go to see the head teacher. He goes to the headmaster, knocks on the door. The headmaster says, "Can I help you?" The student says, "This is a letter, or this is the instructions from the teacher. I've been expelled and suspended from the school." The head teacher looks at him and says, "Tomorrow you come back with your wali, your guardian, whoever it is, your father, or whatever, as long as they are one who looks after you, and we will sign the papers and you're out of the school. How dare you say something like this to your teacher?" The young boy said, "Very well, I'll come back tomorrow with my wali. Who is the person that you would like?" Next day, he comes, knocks on the door. The head teacher says, "Come in. Did you bring your wali? Did you bring the person who's in charge of you?" He says, "Yes." "Bring him inside." Comes inside, and who's with him? His friend, who's also 12 years old. Teacher looks at him and says, "Now you're further making your situation worse. I asked you to bring the person who's in charge of you, your wali. You bring me a boy who's the same age as you. Where is the person who's in charge?" He says, "I thought wali means friend. Didn't you teach us? Man kuntu mawla, fahada aliyyul mawla, means whomsoever I am the friend of, Ali is a friend. You said to me, bring me your wali. He is a friend of mine." He says, "How dare you? When I say wali, I mean the person who is looking after your affairs." He said, "That's why my Prophet says, whomsoever I look after the affairs of and I have authority over, Ali has the authority over." The recognition, therefore, is that fatherhood is a very important position, and it's not something to be taken lightly. When you read the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us wonderful examples of fathers who did their jobs brilliantly. Fathers who are exemplars to you and I. Fathers who were brilliant in what they did. And it's very interesting. Mark these words. You look at the Quran, the main responsibility of upbringing of children and the discussion regarding how religion should be taught in the Quran is presented to be between fathers and their sons and daughters. Often this is left for the mothers, isn't it? But the Quran gives us a number of examples. Like whom? Like, for example, Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam, when he speaks to his sons. You have the example of Prophet Yaqub speaking to Yusuf specifically in another occasion in Surah Yusuf. You have the example of Luqman al-Hakim. وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ. Luqman is having a wonderful conversation with his son. Is giving him a number of pointers, highlighting the effective relationship that can be struck between the father and the child. Similarly, you have a wonderful story of an individual who's the second most mentioned human being in the Quran. Prophet Ibrahim, peace and blessings be upon him. 69 times he's mentioned in the Holy Book. After Musa, who's mentioned 136 times, Ibrahim is the second. Ibrahim has a conversation with whom? With his son. Imagine, this is a son you've been waiting for years. You're in your 90s. Now you see in your dream that you must slaughter your son. How would you say this? Because sometimes when it comes to attitude and the method by which we communicate with our children, there's a lot to learn from the prophets. Ibrahim alayhi salam comes and has a wonderful, loving, compassionate conversation with his son Ismail. When they were about to reach the sa'i, in the pilgrimage, as it is between the mountains, although it was at the beginning of this particular act of worship, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعِي قَالَ يَا بُنَيْ. In Arabic, bunay means my beloved son. Oh my, what? Apple of my eyes. The one that I have so much respect for. Allah has come, I saw in my dream that I have to kill you. I have to slaughter you. What do you think? Because you see, sometimes when it comes to communication with our children, when we think something's right, do we ask them or do we enforce it upon them? Do we see something that you have to do this, whether you like it or not? If you don't do it, this is going to be the result. Ibrahim, he's a prophet. He knows he has to do it. But he comes to his son and says, what do you think? What is your opinion about this? Ismail says to him, Ya abati, oh my beloved father. That the love that is displayed by Ibrahim is reciprocated by Ismail. It is then what? There is this relationship that is struck, that is presented in the Quran. Ya abati fa'al ma tu'mar. Do whatever Allah commands you to do. Satajiduni insha'Allah min as-sabirin. You will find me, if God wills, to be of the patient ones. In between brackets, the Quran on numerous occasions, even the story of Khidr and Musa tells us, insha'Allah means what? It doesn't mean if I feel like it or I'm not definitely going to do it. Insha'Allah, in some of our communities, is an escape clause. Yes? Someone comes to you and says, when are you going to visit me? Insha'Allah, I'll visit you soon. And you think in your mind, never. Yes. Insha'Allah means what? Insha'Allah means I will do it and I will put the effort, but Allah is the one who's going to bless it and make it happen. Insha'Allah means I have made the decision to actually go ahead. So remember, there's this figure, Arab folktale figure by the name of Juha. He once, had a donkey and he wanted to sell the donkey. He said to his wife, I'm going to the marketplace to sell the donkey and I'll be back soon. She said, why don't you say Insha'Allah, I'll sell the donkey? He says, it's a donkey. Doesn't deserve the Insha'Allah. Yes? Too much speech against donkeys today. So when he went out, yes, he took the donkey. On his way, there was a bridge that was feeble, unfortunately. He slipped, the donkey slipped, fell in the water, the donkey died. He came back. His wife said, you've come back very quickly. Have you sold the donkey? He said, the donkey died. Inshallah. Wrong usage. The idea that here Ismail says to whom? Says to Ibrahim, Satajiduni, you will find me. And this is a wonderful example of how this relationship between the father and what? Between the father and the son should be displayed. But sometimes in history, you have the opposite that is also displayed. And the beauty that we find when it comes to the Quran and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt is that you will always find examples from both sides. From both so-called extremes or for both dimensions. You'll find role models, but you also find individuals that you should stay away from. Yes? Wilaya and Bara'a. That both exist. Yes? We have examples such as whom? Al-Mutawakkil al-Abbasi. Mutawakkil al-Abbasi was a wretched individual. An individual who hated the Ahlul Bayt. An individual who made a special effort to ensure that what? To ensure that any form of the remembrance of the Ahlul Bayt is reversed towards spreading hatred towards them, And he was the one who destroyed the shrine of Imam Hussein in Karbala. He was the one who would amputate the hands and the arms of any za'ir, any visitor to the shrines of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He was the one who would recite poetry, mocking Amir al-Mu'minin Sayyidah Fatima. He was in this particular category. His son Muntasir despised this. Son Muntasir had some kind of tendency towards the Ahlul Bayt. Not necessarily a follower, but hated seeing his father speak ill of whom? Of the commander of the faithful. Speak ill of the grandson of the Holy Prophet. So what did he decide one day to do? He said, I have to kill my father. He's the caliph for the Muslims. So what did he do? One day he entered the palace. The son, Muntasir, entered the palace. Saw his father, Mutawakkil, with his advisor, who was a Turk. And they were both doing what? They were drinking alcohol. He came, he had a sword. He cut his father into pieces to the extent that the goblets of the wine and the alcohol were mixed with flesh of his father's body. These are examples of individuals, yes? Father and son, who what? Unfortunately, are to be looked at as those who were not successful. Similarly, we have a very important dua known as dua al-mashlul. We have an unbelievable treasure of supplications. Sometimes, mashallah, we know of the most well-recited and most well-known du'as. But how many of us have picked up Sahifatul Sajjadiyya and explored the ocean of knowledge and spirituality and the keys to success that the Ahlul Bayt have given us? This Sahifatul Sajjadiyya is a gem. You know this professor by the name of Henry Corbin, very well-known professor, non-Muslim. He used to engage in debates or discussions with the famous scholar Allama Tabatabai, the author of Mizan. One day Allama wrote him a letter. He said, we Muslims have dua to speak to God. You Christians, you yourself, how do you speak to God? Professor Corbin sent him a letter. He says, I personally speak to God through the words of Zayn al-Abidin. He says, I use Sahif al-Sajjadiyya because I found that it's truly what the Psalms of Ali Muhammad. It's an unbelievable collection of supplications. Here we have a dua by the name of Dua al-Mashlul. Yes, Dua al-Mashlul is a dua from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa sallam. And the dua signifies how the religion looks at the role of the father. Because narration after narration says, be careful of how you treat your father, because your father is one of the gateways to Jannah. One of the ways in which you can attain paradise. And the Quran affirms this, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. That this respect and this reverence and love towards parents comes only second after worship and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to this dua, what is the story of it? We are told that one time, next to the Holy Kaaba, whom was there? Imam Sayyid al-Shuhada, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, Al-Husayn al-Shaheed, salawatullahi wa sallam. It is narrated that Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam heard someone cry, heard someone beseeching God in a way that drew his attention. So he went to that individual. He saw that individual was paralyzed, a young man. He said to him, what is going on? What is your story? He said, I will tell you my story. He said, come with me. So he helped him, he took him to next to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen was also there. Now this young man tells his story in front of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam and Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says to them that I am an individual who had a habit. My habit was, not only would I answer back my father, not only would I verbally abuse him, but sometimes I physically also hit him. And in one particular occasion, he was asleep. And when he was asleep, what happened was, I went to his room and there was some money that he's hidden. I'd taken this money and he woke up. He says, put the money back. And I said, no. He came towards me to take the money. I struck him. And I struck him and he fell on the ground. The moment he fell on the ground, he raised his hands and says, Ya Allah, take revenge on my behalf from my son. He says, the moment he made this dua and supplication, I had left the room, I collapsed. When I collapsed, I realized I had paralysis. I was no longer able to feel parts of my body. And this has been going on for a while. And I have asked my father to forgive me, but he hasn't. Until I told him, I'll bring you to the Kaaba. Hopefully that he will forgive me next to the Kaaba. On the way, he was what? He was getting onto the camel. He slipped, he fell on the ground, his head on the ground, and he died. Now, I'm in this state and I am desperate. This is a result of the dua of my father. Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him, I'm going to teach you a supplication. Recite this supplication for 40 days sincerely, asking forgiveness from the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what? You will see wonders. And this is dua al-Mashlul. Recite it if you can, yes? Dua al-Mashlul, phenomenal dua, yes? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says, you will find in it Ismul A'zam, the great name of God, yes? And this man recited it for 40 days and he was cured, yes? The realization therefore that emerges is, when you look at Surah Al-Baqarah, it's named after the respect and the reference to the fathers. How many people knew this? Surah Al-Baqarah is the biggest chapter in the Holy Quran. The baqarah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands Bani Israel to slaughter, yes, that cow. The cow that is to be slaughtered by Bani Israel is as a result of what? As a result of one man having so much love for his father that he did what? That he would not wake up his father when he was asleep, when he was about to sell this cow. And a very important business transaction was missed. Yes? Because he didn't want to wake up his father. He had so much respect for his father, he didn't do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says to Bani Israel, go and find this cow. It has these specifications. That's the command that you have. And Bani Israel tried their best to look left and right, to give excuses until they found it. And when they found it, they had to pay a high price. And it was God's reward to that young man due to his love towards his fathers. And this highlights what? This highlights how we should look at this. When you look at Imam Zayn al-Abidin al-Sajjad, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, in this phenomenal works known as Risalatul Huquq, the Treatise of Rights, when it comes to this unbelievable collection of valuable knowledge that sometimes would be useful to share with our non-Muslim friends. Sometimes people ask the question, tell me of something that I can discuss with people who don't understand Islam. Maybe I can present the Quran to them, maybe I can present Nahjul Balagha, but the Quran and Nahjul Balagha and other works may have to be studied within the context, or they may need certain commentary and interpretation. This particular compilation of rights from the fourth Holy Imam is phenomenal, and it's truly something that everyone can understand. From the right to the eye, to the right of the neighbor, to the right of the traveler. One of the rights that the Imam discusses is the right of the father. Very briefly, yes, Imam alayhi salam says, when it comes to your father, know that he is your origin, where you came from. And if it wasn't for him, you will not be here. You will not be in this existence. And therefore, and please understand this, everything that you have, every quality, every virtue that you have in your life, you must be thankful to Allah because the origin of it is your father. Fourth Imam says, if you have wonderful quality, if you're, for example, a great writer, if you're a great businessman, if you're a great pilot, if you're a great speaker, don't underestimate where this has come from. Fourth Imam says, what? This is from your father. This is a wonderful declaration for those to understand the status of the father. Then the Imam alayhi salam goes on to say, make sure you observe the rights of your father. And they are listed in other narrations as well, but in this particular case, he mentions three. He says the first is what? Don't call him by his name. You've watched The Simpsons, yes? Homer. There is a professor by the name of Dr. Leonard Sachs. He has written a wonderful book by the name of Collapse of Parenting. He says if you look at the 50s here in the United States, you'll find that there was reference for parents. Not only amongst the people in this country, but also depicted in the shows, in the cartoons, in television. Generally, parents were what? Honored. He says, look at the situation now. You have these particular shows such as this, where what? This father is depicted as a man who has what? Very little intelligence. He's always what? Doing the wrong thing. His son is laughing at him, mocking him, and so on and so forth. Look at how society wants you to think of your elders, wants you to think of your parents. This is indoctrination and poisoning that is happening to our children. The same author says, be very careful what you allow your children to watch and what you allow children to play. He mentions things like, for example, Grand Theft Auto and Fortnite. I know some people will be upset. He mentioned this in another majlis. A parent came to me and says, we had a fight with my children at home. What this Maulana, what does he know about Fortnite? What is happening there is the problem of grooming, is the problem of violence, yes, that is being enticed towards our children, yes. There is a danger if the fathers don't take this role. But the Imam alayhi salam comes forward at the first level and says that a respect that has to be given towards the father is, don't call your father by his first name. Call him Baba, Father, whatever, out of respect, yes? Sadly, sometimes these adab and etiquettes, the elders here in the community, they think this is absolutely normal. But I can see that unfortunately some of our youngsters are being affected by some of the things that they see in the Western world, where what? Where the fathers and the mothers also are not respected or given the status that they particularly enjoy. Second thing Imam says, as far as the right of the father is what? Is that make sure that you don't enter anywhere before him. Don't sit down before your father sits down. Make sure that he is always in front of you. You're not necessarily in front of him. You're not necessarily leaving him. You're not necessarily not looking after him. And very importantly, the third point that he mentions is what? He says, make sure that you're the source of pride for your father. That every time somebody sees you, they remember your father in good light. That means that you continue the legacy of your father. That means that you become an individual who reminds people about the qualities that your father had, yes? And you become an individual who draws people closer towards righteousness and virtues. Therefore, the recognition is, these are some of the rights that are presented when it comes to what? When it comes to fatherhood and the status that they indeed enjoy. But with this status comes responsibility, isn't it? Because sometimes people ask, what happens, for example, if my father has passed away? How do I ensure that I keep their memory alive? How do I ensure that their rights are fulfilled? I tell you, you can do a lot of things. For example, this particular narration from the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When a person, human being dies, انقطع عمله. Their deeds have severed. That's it. Except for three things. They can still be helped through three things. Sadaqatun jariyah, an ongoing charity that they've left in this world. Secondly is what? Amalun salih, a righteous deed that they have done, which perhaps has influenced and inspired others to follow as well. And thirdly, waladun salihun yad'u lah, a son or a daughter who is left on this world who remembers their parents in dua, who remembers them in good deeds. Therefore, if some of us have lost our fathers, for example, one of the things that we should strive to do is, for example, establish something in their memory, some charitable deed, or at least every year try to do a majlis, remembrance of Ahl al-Bayt in their honor. How wonderful this is. How much reward will they obtain? Because we are told in Iran, there was a man who used to be, mashallah, very charitable, gives to many different projects. A group of people came to them and said, look, we've got a majlis for Imam al-Hussein. Can you donate? He says, very well. He took out his checkbook and says, here, write whatever you want. So those around him says, what do you mean? You must ask them how much they want and you write the quantity. He says, for Majlis of Hussein, I must not limit the quantity. This is Hussein's. So when he signed the check and said to them, you put the quantity that you want, he died. Many years after he died, someone saw him in the dreams and said to him, brother, what is your status now in Alam al-Barzakh? How? What do you... He says, I'm very well. He says, why? He says, when it came to the angels, and when it came to my sins, they said to me, oh, so-and-so, you looked away and did not wear your glasses for the check for the Majlis of Hussein. We look away and we will not scrutinize your sins too.
نعرة صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
And therefore this remembrance is of great importance, yes? But with this comes what? With this comes responsibility. That maybe I can carry on the legacy of my father, even if it's still alive, through how I ensure that I become an exemplary father, yes? Without a shadow of a doubt. Because I tell you today, our youth and our children are facing tremendous challenges. And it is so much on the responsibility of the parents. Because you know what happens this day and age? When we speak to the parents, and especially the father, they say, the best solution to the problems that our children are facing, such as what? Such as the rise of LGBT. Q+++. Yes. Such as what? Such as influence of friends. Such as, for example, distance away from religion. Such as the culture between, the clash between culture and religion. Such as so many other issues, marital problems. There are so many lists of problems that we are facing. Yes, as a community, as far as our youth and our youngsters are concerned. Maybe they're disenchanted with the religion of Islam. Maybe they don't connect with it as much as we expect them to do, yes? And somebody will come and ask the question and will say what? Will say why we have so many problems. Maybe some of the parents will say it's because of M&Ms. Oh, the solution lies with M&Ms. I've heard this people say. M&Ms are the solution. No problems. M&Ms is not the very delicious chocolates that are made of peanuts. M&Ms is the madrasa and the mimbar. Yes? People say, we leave it to the M&Ms. You, Imam Maulana, maybe it should be 3 M's. Maulana, madrasa and mimbar. Yes? The idea that happens is what? They say the madrasa will do its job. The mimbar will do its job. That's what I have to do. I have to provide for my family. I have to make sure that they have a good education. They have to have a good quality of life. But outside that, don't expect me to do anything. This is where the problem lies. Because at the outset of where all our issues lies, the notion that is so critical that I need your attention for a few moments. And that is what? Especially for fathers, the importance of them being exemplary and role models in the house. Meaning what? Many complain, my son listens to music. My son doesn't do his namaz and prayers. My daughter doesn't wear hijab. My son cheats and lies. My son doesn't like coming ziyarah. My daughter does this. I asked him and I say to them, you want your son not to lie, then you don't lie. You want your son to watch halal, you only watch halal. You want your son or daughter not to listen to music, you don't listen to music. You want your son and daughter to have a good connection with the Quran, you have a good connection with the Quran. You want your children to have a strong affinity with Allah and Islam, you start by having a strong affinity and connection with Islam. You lead by example. It is much more effective when it comes to fathers. Specifically, when it comes to fathers, because mashallah, some of our mothers are doing a fantastic job. And our fathers too. But sometimes our fathers are not necessarily investing into this particular upbringing in tarbiyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says what? وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا. Yes. Ya Allah, give mercy upon my parents. Why? Because they fed me, yes? No. Because they gave me clothing. No. This is very, very important. وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. Rabbayani means comes what? Tarbiyah. Comes from upbringing. They ensured that they do not only feed my stomach, they fed my heart. Because many times, yes, we neglect this issue. But outstandingly important is the role of the father to be exemplary, to lead by example. In every situation, to be able, sometimes, yes, we expect our children not to do certain things, to pray on time, and when it comes to prayers, time of prayers, we are watching television, or we don't necessarily care, yes? But some people ask the question here, further on, very well, but how do fathers today ensure that they become role models? What are the key things, very briefly, that we encourage, starting with ourselves, all the fathers that are here, and all those who can later on perhaps be told of making sure practical ways in which they can keep their responsibilities alive before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the most important things that we see neglected today is the presence of love and compassion in the household. You see, the Almighty says in the Quran that a marital setup, a family, has to have وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. It must be infused with compassion and love. Today we are not spending enough time with our children. Perhaps if there is a study today, our children spend more time on social media than they do with their parents. Sometimes some of our fathers out there, they are like walls in the house. They're just there. Oh brother, but I'm busy. I have to go to work, I have to come back. Weekends are busy, back and forth. Children need us. They need that quality time. They need that ability to communicate, open the heart. You know, if we don't invest when they're young, when they're 14 and 15 and they're not listening to us, and when they have a problem, they turn to their friends, and then I pick up the phone, Maulana, please help. The ship has sailed. It's gone. Don't expect Maulana to have a magic wand, or Maulana Taweez, or Maulana black magic, or Maulana jinn, or Maulana my son is gone. Invest in your children from a young age. Establish this quality relationship, this friendship from the beginning. Have conversations with them. You see what the problem is sometimes? Is we don't like to listen. We become agitated. Or we listen in order to respond to our children. We don't necessarily listen out of empathy, or out of understanding, or out of building that bond that can necessarily encourage to be strengthened. Very key and important here when it comes to what? Developing a good role model as a father. That's number one. In order for us to what? Sometimes we react angrily. Sometimes we use the wrong words with our children. Spending time, giving them attention, listening to them, yes, encouraging them. Today we have a very big problem with some of our sisters. Low self-esteem. That's why you see them on social media looking for the likes, looking for the approvals, because they're not necessarily getting it at home. Some of the fathers out there, for example, and I know today I'm focusing much about the fathers, and I know I'll be bombarded with emails by some of our sisters. Why didn't you say anything about the mothers? And that's the problem. Every time there's expectation of both, but we are focusing on the fathers today for a specific reason. And that is what? And that is that they have a very important role. As much as mothers also have an important role, but sometimes this role is neglected or not necessarily investigated. Sometimes we need to tell our daughters and our sons how much proud we are of them. Sometimes we need to shower them with this self-esteem and confidence, yes, in order to give them that strength in the battlefield that exists out there. That's number one. Number two, please pay attention to this last point, which is critical. What is happening? What is happening is, today we live in the I want culture. What is this I want culture? Yes. I want culture is too much consumerism, materialism. And our children are growing up thinking success is when we have more. When they listen to their parents having a conversation, do their parents have a conversation about how to get close to Allah, how to improve my salah, how to serve others, or worried about rents, worried about, for example, the bills, worried about bank statements and so on? So they're listening in the background, the children, and they're getting this image that, you know what? What is really key and important in life is to what? To gain as much as possible. Look at these subliminal ways. The children are very smart, yes? From a young age, what kind of image we're presenting for them? And as far as what key aspirations and goals in life. Sadly, our youth and our children sometimes are into this mode that whatever new that's out there, whatever new gadget, they would like to have it. Whatever that there is a famous sports star that has something, they'd like to have it. There is no problem there as such, yes, until it becomes an obsession, until it becomes the number one goal, yes. And we're missing the spirit, yes. We're missing this understanding of what is key, and therefore there is a big epidemic. Mark these words, and this is demonstrated by what? By evidence. World Federation did this project called North Star. Sometimes we mention things from the member. People say, what's the evidence? This project North Star, examining the Hoja communities around the world, asking them pivotal questions. When they were asked, what is the biggest thing that you have concerns about? The vast majority, over 80% said lack of spirituality. The biggest concern families have around the world, lack of spirituality. I asked them, what is spirituality? Flying on a carpet? What is it? Maybe you don't know what spirituality is. Maybe we need to develop understandings and programs to engage and to really focus on what people think and how do they perceive this connection to God the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to create an environment within the house of what? Of remembrance of God, of being good human beings, of the nurturing of the connection with the Quran. How many of us as parents have a very close connection, relationship with the Quran? Do we love the Quran? If we want our children to have this connection with the Quran, then we must also begin it. Similarly, we need to develop their conscience. In other words, when we have a child, if I'm a father and I have a child who's allergic to nuts, what do? I make sure that they, from a young age, check the ingredients of the product, yes? Because I can't always do it for them. I can't always be there for them. I also need to make sure that my child, my son and daughter, also, at the same time as they check the ingredients for that which causes allergy to their body, make sure that they check in their mind before they do anything that causes allergy to their souls. Meaning sins. Meaning I can't be a CCTV monitoring their actions 24 hours. I need to nurture within them this power that God the Almighty has given them, which is what? Which is to think, right? That this is not good, true, this is not right, I must not do it, this is not good for me, it is not conducive for my development. Similarly, I need to develop practical ways to make learning and religion more applicable. And this is key, yes. Which means what? Which means much more interactive discussions. How many times we attend majalis? On the way back in the car, do we have a discussion? Or at home, do we engage with our children as to what we learned? Or make it something which is fun? That Islam is presented to them in a way that is beneficial for them, yes? Not only beneficial, but there's something that they have this affinity with, something that they develop that connection with. And this requires a lot of thought, a lot of investment, and a team effort between the husband and wife. Without a shadow of doubt, between the father and the mother, that needs to be focused. Amongst many things, we need to ensure that what? We need to ensure that we keep the strength of the love of Ahl al-Bayt amongst our children. And our fathers have a pivotal role here. There was a man by the name of Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali. Al-Aswad al-Du'ali was a companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa sallam alayhi. One day he came home and he saw that his daughter was consuming honey. Honey was a very expensive commodity back in the time. And he had not bought it. So he wondered, where is this honey from? So he asks his daughter, where did you get this from? She said, a man knocked on the door and said, this is a gift from Muawiyah for you. That's it. That's all there is. And therefore I'm just having the honey. I'm absolutely loving it. It's so delicious. He said to her, this might taste like honey, but in reality is poison. She says, why? He had to say only one thing. By consuming this honey, your love for Ali ibn Abi Talib will diminish and become weaker. She then would vomit this honey and say words of poetry and Arabic, which meant, oh Muawiyah, you could give me honey or whatever is sweeter, you could never remove the love of Ali from my heart. Of utmost importance is what? To take our families towards ziyarah, because the fathers most of the time make this particular intention, yes? Some of our sisters complain, they say, how many times? We say to my husband, please, let's go ziyarah as a group. Go with a group that speaks English, has Maulanas that speak English. Don't go by yourself. Maulana, I went, alhamdulillah, I showed them, this is Masjid al-Kufa. What's Masjid al-Kufa? Wallah, I don't know. I don't have Google, no internet. Make sure that when you take them, there is proper guidance, yes? Proper instruction. Our children want that, yes? Ensuring that this particular legacy of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam is kept alive, and not forgetting the role of social media. Without a shadow of a doubt, many of our fathers out there may not be on social media. They don't have a clue what's going on out there on Instagram, on Snapchat, or Facebook. They think, okay, everything is rosy. But on social media, all kinds of things are happening, which we need to be also aware of, understanding, and that comes through establishing this connectiveness, parenting by connectiveness, fatherhood by being exemplary, and making sure that this element is preserved. And this is the responsibility of the father, supported by the mother as a unit. And indeed, today we have gathered to honor an important individual who is like a father figure for this community, yes? We spoke about the founding fathers, yes? And indeed, this particular marhum, may Allah bless his soul, Al-Haj Shani, yes, Abdul Hussein, Ja'far, he was truly a founding father for this particular community here in Allentown, and for most of us who knew him, of his heart that was kind, of his smile, of his eagerness to help, to assist, to invite people to his house, to have a conversation with him. Yes, he is truly missed. Yes, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise him with Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And when we come to reflect upon exceptional fathers, yes, we look at the Holy Prophet of Islam, who would come forward and would say and would talk about Sayyidah Fatima and would say what? That she is Ummu Abiha. She is the mother of her own. What kind of a father was Rasulullah? What kind of a father was Amir al-Mu'mineen? These are wonderful examples of fatherhood, but when it comes to Karbala, there were a number of great individuals who demonstrated the principles and the values and what it means to be a great father before the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're spoiled for choice in Karbala. Definitely, yes. When it comes to motherhood, when it comes to fatherhood, so many different examples are presented before us, yes, of great individuals. You look at, for example, Ali al-Akbar, or how he came forward and how his love was towards his father, yes, without a shadow of a doubt. You look at people like Al-Qasim, how he wanted to honor his father, who was not there, of course, on the 10th of Muharram. You look at this young man who came, and history doesn't record his name, but he was perhaps 12 years of age. He emerged towards the master of the martyrs. He had the sword in his hand. Imam al-Hussein says to him, your father has just been killed in the battlefield. What are you doing? He says, my master, allow me to join my father in paradise. He says, no, go back. Your mother needs you. He says, Wallah, my mother is the one who's encouraging me. Yes. And then when he's given permission, he goes to the battlefield and he recites these wonderful lines of poetry. Amiri Husaynun wa ni'mal amir. My master is Hussein, the best of masters. He is the one that is the pride of my eyes. And I give my life for a man like Hussein. And therefore you recognize that many fathers gave their lives on the 10th of Muharram. They will sacrifice their lives. And indeed, their sons who remained alive would ensure that they would bury their bodies. But there was one man who was the best of fathers on that day. The best individual, heart full of love, heart full of compassion, heart full of sympathy towards all humankind. And his son had to bury his body. But when did he bury his body? He did not bury his body on the day of his martyrdom. He did not bury the body on the next day or the next day. He came on the eve of the 13th of Muharram. It is very difficult for a son to bid farewell to his father. It's one of the hardest things that any human being would do. But I ask you, how did Zayn al-Abidin look at the body of his father? No one would have to go through this pain that the fourth Imam had to go through. Because they asked him, they said, Ya Sajjad, Ya Zayn al-Abidin, there were so many bodies littered on the plains of Karbala. How did you find the body of our father Hussein? He said, the body of my father Hussein was the most distinguished body on the plains, because there was no body like the body of Hussein, who was torn into pieces, covered with arrows. When he sits next to his father's body, the narrations tell us that he looks at the body, there is no head of the body, yes. And he begins to cry, he begins to weep, he begins to speak to his father. Then he decides to bury the body of his father, yes. When he begins the process of burial, Bani Asad come to him. They say to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, would you like any assistance and help? He says, no, but I would like something from you. They say, why? What is it that you want? He said, I would like a piece of cloth, just any piece of cloth. They said, why? He said, every time I pick up the body of my father, one part of it falls off. I need a piece of cloth. I need to gather the body parts. I need to gather the body of my father Hussein. When he places him under the ground, I ask you, why was the body of Abu Abdullah torn into these pieces? Today when you go to Karbala, when you see the place where Imam alayhi salam was beheaded, you'll see that it was far. It's a number of meters away from where he's buried. So normally, when somebody of the Ahl al-Bayt is martyred, they are normally buried exactly on that location. Why is Hussein buried a few meters away? Because the horses dug their heels on the chest of Hussein, broke his ribs one after the other, turned his body into a mesh. That's why Zayn al-Abidin lowers the body, yes, into the grave. Bani Asad said, we looked at him, we observed his behavior, we recognized that he would not seal the grave. He left it and he went out. The grave was still open. He was wandering around the plains of Karbala. He was looking for something. When they later asked him, they said, Zayn al-Abidin, you went to the battlefield. You came back with something in your hands. He says, Wallah, I was looking for the severed fingers of my father Hussein. My father Hussein's fingers were severed because they wanted his rings and it was stuck with the blood, yes. But yet he does not seal the grave. Yet he goes what? He goes out. When he goes out, he's looking for something. He returns with something under his cloak. They later ask him, what did you bring back, Zayn al-Abidin? He said, when I looked at the body of my father, there is no head to embrace. There is no neck to kiss. When I decided to leave the body, I heard a cry from the direction of the body. The direction of the call was that, oh my son Ali, bring me my baby, my baby. Where is my Asghar? Place my Asghar on my chest. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين وإنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.